So, Doom token, 1 out of 7. Draw a card. A swarm of rats. Hunter, a horde of cruel rats skitters forth in an undulating wave of claws, teeth, and mottled fur. Alright, so swarm of rats, they have 1 hit point. We need to fight them. 3, they have 3 evade, 1, okay, what is that called? I always forget what that card is actually called on the enemies. That is called enemy fight value. Yeah, fight value, okay. So the fight value is 1. Their hit points, enemy health value is 1, and the enemy evade value is 3, okay. And they're a hunter, which means that they will follow us around the areas. They'll chase after investigators to attack them. They're hungry little mice. And they only do 1 damage to our health if they attack us, and no sanity damage it would be on this side if they attack us. So because they are at our location, now some of these guys will have a spawn. It'll say like spawn in the cellar, or for example spawn in the attic. If this was that, they wouldn't come here. They would actually spawn at that location. Now, if it says spawn at a location and that location isn't on the board at the time, then they will just go back to the discard pile. But because we drew it on our turn and there's no spawn thing, they actually come into play, engaged with us, so they're coming after us right away. Which isn't the worst thing, because these guys are easy to kill, and we have evidence that we can use. If we kill an enemy, we discover a clue at our location. So and this is a tough location to discover a clue at, so it kind of worked out in our favor a little bit, maybe. We'll see. The other thing I didn't explain, just to do quickly, is movement. So every card has an icon on the top left, and that is basically the icon that represents that specific location. So this is like a square here. So if we want, to move, we can move to any location with these icons on the bottom. They link. So for example, this icon links to the bottom of another card. This icon links to the bottom of another card. So this one matches red square, so we can go from the hallway to any one of these. Now if we're in the cellar, it's got this plus sign. We could move back here because it's a plus sign, but we cannot move to the attic because there's no plus sign down here to link it. So basically, every time we go in a room, we have to go back to the hallway and then go back out into a different room. So we can't just go from this cellar to the attic, which makes sense. But for other scenarios, you know, it's important how the movement works. All right, so we have an enemy. It is now the investigator phase. So we're gonna take these swarm of rats out. We only need 1 in our combat. We have a 3 combat. We only need to hit them. Now, anytime you hit an enemy, you do 1 damage, unless you use certain items. So if we use our Derringer, we would actually, if we succeed by 2 or more, we would do plus 1 damage. So we do 2 damage to the rat. But we don't really need to use this because 1 hit is enough to kill him, and we do 1 naturally. So I think we're gonna go after these guys. We're going to fight them. Now, the problem is we are still frozen in fear, of course, which means this is going to take 2 actions to do this normally 1 action. So if we're going to fight. We have a 3 combat against his 1 fight value. So -2 or better, and we beat these guys. And we're not going to use any cards. We're just going to go for it. And we're not going to use our gun. And we're not going to use our guard dog, even though he doesn't really help us here. The guard dog is more, if we get attacked, he'll do damage to the enemy. Alright, so let's see what we get. So we need a -1 or better, -2 or better, 3 on a 1. So we get a skull. Alright, now every game has a card up here for the difficulty. So these icons will always represent different things based on the scenario, which is really cool because they could really change up how these scenarios work with these extra tokens. Like this could always be something different that's more scenario specific. It's a great idea with these tokens. I love the tokens. So -X. X is the number of ghoul enemies at your location. Well, we have none. We have only 1 enemy at a location, and it is a creature, not a ghoul. So this means -0, basically. Which means we pass. So we do 1 damage to the rats. which kills them off. Now, if the rats, some enemies have victory on the bottom, kind of like the locations. If these were, they would go in our victory pile. But since it doesn't, they just go in the discard pile. And we are going to play, since we killed a rat, our evidence for 1. And this is a fast action, which means it doesn't actually cost an action. It's like a free play. It's usually triggered by something, and in this case, after we defeat an enemy, discard 1 clue at your location. We still have to pay the cost of 1 to use it, which we will do. And we get to discover a clue at our location. And we discovered one of those clues. So in these tunnels below Skid's house, these rats swarm him. He takes 1 out. He follows the rat trail from where they came back to try to figure out, to find some more areas down here in this tunnels and try to figure out what's going on. So after that happens, we have, let's see, we have 1 action left? Yeah, that was the first action. No, yeah, fighting was our first action. And it cost us 2, so we have 1 thing left to do here. So we're gonna go for this. Yeah. Let's see if we could get this last clue in the cellar. Skids keeps looking around. He's gonna pull his flashlight out. The darkness of the cellars makes it hard to see. He's got a 4, but by using his flashlight, he's gonna use his last action to spend a supply and get -2 shroud. So this is now at a 2, and he is at a 3 intellect, going for a 2 shroud. He could play perception, and I think he will. You could play any number of cards for their skill value here in the game. And if you play with other people, they can play 1 each to help you. So he's using his flashlight to make that a 2. He's using perception to make his skill a 5. So it's a 5 on a 2. So -3 or better is good for us. And if we succeed, we draw a card. So we need a -3 or better in this bag of evil. Let's see what we get. We get a -1. Alright, so we're good. So not only do we get the clue, but we get to draw a card. And we draw first aid. Nice. So this has 3 supplies. And if we has no supplies, we discard it. So this is one of the cards where you do that. Spend 1 supply, heal 1 damage or horror from an investigator location. And that is a nasty looking wound right there. That is disgusting. Alright. So we throw that down, and that is a talent. So talents are cards that you can put down, and they don't really have a body part that matters, or an ally, or a hand, or an amulet. They just kind of can go out for you, and they're kind of free. They're just a talent that you have. So he's good at first aid. Okay. So Skids finds that last clue. He kind of comes to a realization in a way that maybe he can use some of the ice that's down in the cellar to put the fire out upstairs. But how he's going to get the fire, this ice up there? We'll have to figure. He has to try to figure that out himself. Figure out a little bit more. So what is he going to do next? I think he's going to wait. We're doing pretty good. We could spend these 2 resources to do another action and move. Which could be useful, because if we fail on our Frozen in Fear, moving always costs 2 that first time. So should he do that, or should he save those for first aid, maybe? You know, I think he's going to use them to move back to the hallway to get a leg up on in case we don't succeed at our Frozen in Fear. So he's going to spend 2 resources to trigger his ability to take an additional action this turn, once per turn. And he's going to use that to move back, because he can't move to the attic. He's going to move back to the hallway. And then he's going to end his turn there. And at the end of his turn, he gets to try this test again. And now that he's got a little bit more resolve, he's got some guts. He went down in that cellar, he fought off some rats, he found some clues, and he thinks he has an idea of something he might be able to do. He's starting to get a little bit, that fear is starting to get away a little bit from him. He's getting a little bit of guts, so he's going to use that. So his willpower is 2, plus the 2 here is 4 for this test. And he needs a 3 or better to stop this fear that is overcome him. So 4 on a 3. Let's see what he can do. He gets a skull, which is good for us because there are no ghoul enemies at our location. So it's a 0, so we pass. So he gets some guts, he gets some resolve, and he fights his fears. And as usual, some of these skill cards, if you succeed, draw a card. And he draws physical training. Now these are awesome. I love these talent cards. So you can use it for willpower or combat. But the big thing about these is you can spend a resource to add 1 to your willpower or 1 to your combat, and there's other cards with different variations. There's intellect and agility as well. But these you can spend as many as you want because this is a free action. It doesn't say limit 1 per turn. So if I had 3 resources, for example, and I had to make a very difficult willpower test, my willpower is only 2, but if I had 3 resources, I can use all 3 of them to make it a 5 for that one test. And these just stay out, just like any other talent. They don't take up a slot in your character. So, very cool. Very good card to have. Alright, Skids is done. Got rid of this. And we are going to the enemy phase. There are none. Then we move on to the upkeep phase. So we flip Skids over again. We draw a new card. And hospital debts. Remember, he has problems. His mother's in the hospital, and he's accruing these debts. He doesn't know what he's gonna do. He already stole and was caught once trying to get money for her. Revelation: put hospital debts into play in your threat area. Okay. As a action, move 1 resource. Not really an action. What's that called? It's like an instant, but it's not called that. What's it called? Dang it. I'll find out what it's called. Move 1 resource from your resource pool to hospital debts. Limit twice per round. Forced. When the game ends, if hospital debts has fewer than 6 resources on it, you earn 2 fewer experience for this scenario. That sucks. So we need to basically spend 6 resources, only 2 per round, on this card. And if we beat the game or lose before these debts are taken care of, we get 2 fewer experience points to level up our character at the end. That really sucks. Alright. So I'll put those here. Right now we have no resources. And we do get 1 resource when we draw a card. That's terrible. So that is this is Skids O'Toole's specific weakness that is always in his deck. He always has this problem. These hospital debts keep piling up. He's trying to help his mom, and he's just having trouble doing it. Always a problem for him. Alright, now we double check. We are less than 8 cards. We are definitely. So we move on to our Mythos phase, and another tick on the clock to a 7. And we draw our card. And we get Frozen in Fear again. What is going on, Skids? Well, we already know what this card does. Skids, after climbing up the cellar, get back to the hallway, he fought off those rats, he learned some stuff, and then the problem with his mother hit him like a ton of bricks, and he's fearful again for those debts that he owes. And that is taking him over again. Skids has this problem with being fearful, apparently. And that is going to hurt him big time. So, now we are on our turn. And because of that, Skids has to take 2 actions to move to the cellar, to the attic. We still can't get to the parlor. So he's going to do that. So the attic. The smell of rotten meat assaults your nostrils as you approach. So we're going to flip it over. That is I did not. Skids does not remember leaving that up there. Forced. After you enter the attic, take 1 horror, of course. So that picks us at 3 horror. We're going to take it still. I'm going to save that 1 that our dog can take, Butch, because we don't want to kill him off with something like that. We want him to work on an enemy if possible. A bloody carcass of a malformed beast swings from a meat hook chained to the ceiling. Blood drains slowly from the carcass, dripping into a small barrel. So this is another victory card. 2 clues. So as I said earlier, we actually are going to, at the end of this scenario, be able to claim this location for a victory point, which is an experience point, which is big. Especially now that we have these hospital debts, what might make us get 2 less experience is if we get both of these locations totally done, kind of mitigates the hospital debts if we don't get through that. But of course we'd like to get through that, but that's an expensive card. 6 clues, 2 out of a round. I don't know. Alright, so we are up there with Skids. That was 2 actions to move there because of his fear. So he has 1 left. And he is going to try to find some clues up here in the attic. It's only got a shroud value of 1. And he has an intellect of 3. So he is just going to go for it. Is he going to use the flashlight? I think he might as well. Just in case. You never know. Yeah, he's going to use the flashlight to change that shroud value down to 0. Let me double check on the negatives. I can't remember if it works at negatives or not. Alright, so yeah, skill or value cannot be... You can have multiple modifiers that lower something down past into the negatives, but the final remaining value of say the shroud or one of our abilities here can't go less than 0. So like if I used a flashlight to make this a -1 and then I had another card to make it another -1, it would go down to a -2, for example, and then say something else came out to add 1 to it, it would go back to a -1, and then, for example, so it kind of stops at a -1 after so many modifiers have been applied. Then once all the modifiers are done, then you look, and if it's at a negative, it just goes to 0. So multiple modifiers could drop it down, but once all the modifiers have been played, if anything's passed under 0, it goes to 0. So even though we made this a -1 technically with our flashlight, in the end right now it's a 0. So we still got 1 off of it. And we have a 3 intellect going after a 0. So we need 3 or better to get a clue here in the attic. And we find, an elder sign, which is really good. It's the best thing we can get. So these are different for every investigator. +2, so we obviously succeed. If you succeed, gain 2 resources. That is awesome. So he's at 3. And we get a clue for succeeding. So we are at 3 clues, which is what we need. We have to be back in the hallway with 3 clues at the end of a round to succeed at this. Now, here's the big question. Do we want to do that? We are done technically. We moved for 2 because of Frozen in Fear. We did our 3rd action, but Skids could spend 2 resources to get another action. And since he already moved, it's only going to cost 1 action to move back to the hallway. And if we get back to the hallway, we can spend these 3 clues this round to advance our deck. Or do we stay here 1 more round and try to get that last clue to help with our experience points? Try to get a victory point here because these hospital debts, remember, are going to drain us of 2 XP at the end. I think I'm going to stay here 1 more round and try to get that last one to get that experience point. Might be a bad idea, but that's what we're going to go with. So we're done. Alright, so that's the end of the round for Skids. He's going to flip. And no enemies in play still, so we flip back. Actually, sorry, before we do that, we get to test our Frozen in Fear at the end of the round. The problem is we don't have anything to boost it. We don't have any willpower. We do it with the first aid, but I think I'm going to keep the first aid in case. I don't want to get rid of it. We could use physical training, but we might play this next round, and then we can use clues for the following. So we're just going to go for it. If we get an elder sign or a +1, we got it. Anything else, we're stuck. We're still Frozen in Fear. Let's see. So we get a +1. What? So we have a 2. +1 is 3, and we need a 3. Amazing draw for skids, and we actually get rid of our fear. That is awesome. Wow, that was lucky. I'll take it. Okay, other than that, we are officially done with our round now. So I flipped him. Okay, now I'll go back to the monsters. Round, and I want to check how our, in the book here, it gives a clue on timing. Because we may, now that we're in the enemy phase, after a hunter enemies move, there are none, but there's a player window. There's also a player window here. The upkeep phase begins. So I want that player window for this. That's where you can use these type of actions. And we may start trying to move them over. I think we're going to do that here. I'd still like to get rid of this debt. I don't want to get it. Alright, so the monster phase is done. So we flip skids back over. Upkeep phase begins. So before we actually do that, we're going to have a player window. So we're going to stake 2 of our tokens. We can do max 2, limit twice per round, and put them on hospital debts. So we need 4 more on there to get rid of this card before the end of this scenario. Okay, so now we are out of our player window. We reset our actions. Ready exhausted cards. Draw a card. And we get overpower with a pirate. Arg. +2 to our combat. Nice. So all these cards with the +2 are the same. They give the +2 to a certain ability. And then you can do 1 test and you can draw a card if you're successful. I loaded up skids on these. I got 2 of each. You always have 2 of any card in your deck. I gave him 2 of overpower, 2 of dex, 2 of all of them. That the agility, combat, intellect, and willpower ones, because he's by himself and he's going to need these bonuses by himself. I thought these double bonuses are really important, so I loaded him up with those, and then I gave him a flashlight, and that was all his extra cards besides the ones that he gets from his character classes. Alright, so that's nice. And then we get a resource. And that means we are not at 8, we are at 5 cards, so we move on to the Mythos phase. And we put our 3rd token up here, and we draw yet another card of evil, and we get Crypt Chill. We are down in that attic, or we're in the attic now. You think the cellar would be a little colder, but it's cold up here too, apparently. It's a hazard. Revelation, test willpower 4. Great. If you fail, choose and discard 1 asset you control. If you cannot, take 2 damage instead. The supernatural cold threatens to freeze your soul. Well, we don't have guts anymore to play that card. So we have to discard an asset we control, which is an asset on the table. We may discard... Well, we'll probably discard the flashlight, which I don't think we're going to really need too much anymore. Unless we get a Elder Sign, we're going to fail this. It's a 4. We have a 2. We have no way to improve it. We do, but I don't want to waste these cards to improve it right now. I don't think we're going to need the flashlight anymore. So let's hope for an Elder Sign. -4. It has the complete opposite of an Elder Sign, so we fail. So we have to choose and discard 1 asset we control. And we're going to discard our flashlight. So we get bombarded by the supernatural chill. The flashlight actually cracks in our hand, and we deemed unusable. So we have to drop it up here in the attic and work and move on without it. And it is now our turn. So we are going to try to get this last clue in the attic without our flashlight, but it's a little brighter up here, as you see. There's a little bit of light. So there's only a 1 in our shroud, and we have a 3, so we need a 2 or better to get this. So let's try, and we pull a this tablet or tentacle. Looks like a tentacle tablet thing. What is this one? We haven't seen this one yet. -2. If there's a ghoul, take a damage. There's no ghoul allocation, but it's a -2, which gives our intellect a 1. Oh, actually, that's okay. -2 makes our intellect a 1, and there's only a 1 shroud, so we actually pass with that. Alright, so we get our last clue. And we successfully completed both of these places. So those are victory points for us at the end. That's awesome. So Skid's looking around this attic. He realizes that with the snow in the basement, maybe if he uses this barrel, fills it up, he may be able to break through that barrier of heat. That's his thinking. So he passes his first test in the attic. And now he is going to move back to the hallway here for his second action. And his third action, at the end of the round, is when he can try to move past. So he's got one action left here. Does he want to play a card? He probably should. He might play first aid or physical training. Either one would be very useful here. He's got 3 horror out of 6, so that's kind of scaring me. I think he's going to play first aid. He's going to spend these 2 resources that he should be using on his mom's hospital bills, but if he's not around, what good is that going to do him? He's going to play first aid, which gets 3 supplies. And as an action, he could heal 1 damage or horror. So he's going to throw that out there right now. And that is the end of his turn. He doesn't have any resources to do a 4th action, which is his thing. So he's going to flip his card, and he is done. So now is the enemy phase. No enemies. Now back to upkeep. So he's going to reset his action. No cards are exhausted. He's going to draw a new one and get Vicious Blow. Alright, it's a skill to combat. If the skill test is successful, the attack deals +1 damage. With a sickening smack, he struck the abomination over and over until at last it stopped moving. Nice. Alright. So, we got a little bit of extra damage there, potentially. And he gets a resource. Alright, and that is the end of the round. So, we are in the hallway at the end of the round, and we have enough clues. So we are going to advance our act. So we're going to spend our 3 clues that we have. All we needed. We got 4, but we only need to spend 3. To advance, when the round ends, investigators in the hallway spend the requisite number of clues. Using the barrel from the attic, you carry ice and snow from the cellar and hurl it at the barrier. The barrier sparks and shudders as it consumes the ice, then hisses and fades out of existence. The barrier blocking passage into the parlor has vanished. Reveal the parlor. Alright. So here's our parlor. Parlor. Location. Oh, look at that nastiness. Resign. This is too much for me. You run out the front door, fleeing in panic. So that is one of the actions you can actually take. So you could technically quit the game. You can resign and say screw this and leave. The reason you would do that is if you know you're not going to win. If you lose all your health, you start the next scenario in the story with a detriment to your health. I can't remember what it's called, but you start with 1 health token already. If it's sanity, you start with 1 sanity token already. Mental trauma and physical trauma, I believe is what it's called. So if you know you're not going to win, it's probably better to resign and just move on to the next one with some extra other penalties, or maybe not getting a bonus something, but your character doesn't start with these extra issues on them. And the other thing it says is while Lita Chandler is not controlled by a player, she gains Parlay. So that's another action you can do. You can try to talk people into things. Test Intellect 4. If you succeed, take control of Lita Chandler. Alright, so who is Lita Chandler? Well, we have to put the set aside Lita Chandler into play in the parlor. So here she is. So Lita is the Zealot. She's an ally. While you control Lita Chandler, she gains. Each investigator at your location gets +1 combat. Nice. And as a reaction, when an investigator at your location successfully attacks a monster, the investigator deals +1 damage. So not only will she give us +1 to our skill check to hit the monster, she also gives us +1 to damage it. And she could take a lot of damage, 3 health and 3 horror. But she's an ally. We can only have one. So if we did ever get her and we put her into play, we would have to. We could put her into play, but the guard dog will have to be discarded because you can only have one ally at a time. So she is in the parlor. And then, let's see. Spawn the set aside ghoul priest in the hallway. Breaking the barrier. That is not a good sign. So here's our ghoul priest. So he spawns in the hallway with skids. So let's see what this guy's got. He's got 4 combat or 4 fight value. 5 health per investigator. So only 5 for us. 4 evade value. He's a humanoid, a monster, a ghoul, and an elite. His prey is the highest combat. So if there's, say, he goes to a location with more than 1 investigator, he will engage the one with the highest combat. That's what prey is. He is a hunter, which means he follows us around. And he has retaliate, which means if we attack him and we fail, he will damage us. That is bad. If we attack and we succeed, he won't. It's only if we fail. A figure in red robes wearing a bone mask. It gibbers and snarls before leaping to attack. And here is our ghoul priest. That is not a good happy camper. He's worth 2 victory points, though, which is awesome. And we have 2... he does 2 damage, though. 2 health and 2 horror damage to us. Ugh. So he spawns at the location, which means, since we're at the location, he technically spawns right in front of us. Is what happens. He engages us instantly. So he's right up in our face. Let's see what our act is. What have you done? A woman with a torch stands in your parlor, a glimmer of hatred in her eyes. What have you done to my barrier? She screams, furious. Before you can answer, a ghastly wail sounds behind you, and a creature wearing robes and a deer skull mask tears through the wall, advancing toward you. Objective: if the ghoul priest is defeated, advance. So all we know is we have to kill that ghoul priest to advance. Now that's not the only way this could end. We could resign, for example, instead of killing him. So if you're like, well, there's no way we're going to kill this dude, we're running, we're going to resign, that will change the outcome of the quest, which is what's so awesome about this game, is that there's many different, well, there's, up to 3 to 4 different ways an outcome could happen, and even if you fail, that doesn't mean that you don't replay the scenario. You just fail it, and then you resign, and then you move on to the next one with different things will happen. It's awesome. Okay, so that is what's going on. So we have Lita Chandler in our parlor, screaming that we broke the barrier. We have this ghoul priest that ran out of the wall and now charged at us, and he is a nasty little bugger. So we have some issues going on here, and that was all at the end of the round because we advanced our act deck. So now we move on to the mythos phase.